It's really interesting for me that go through this awakening journey. I remember when I first stumbled across the secret societies beyond the government, the aliens, the UFO. I had no interest in studying those materials at first. Like I've seen those articles or videos that pops up in the past. I just had maybe when I was like 15 or 18, I have some interest and I looked at, like most people, I looked into it briefly, but it's not something that really intrigues me. But as I go through studying about why are we awakening, what is our purpose here, what Atlantis provides us is a really blueprint or kind of like a case studies of where we could be going or where it's likely for us to keep going and what are some of the lessons that we could learn from it. So Atlantis, if you don't know, is a race of people, and some people could see Atlantis as a location. It's basically Atlantis is, you can call it as a time or a race of people, but there were certain people at the time of Atlantis, they're living in a further distance. It's almost like the indigenous people or other people that didn't want to be part of this highly technological advanced developments for whatever the reason. So there was a main hub of Atlantis, and it's from the channeling that went through is currently underwater in the location of the Atlantic Ocean. But during the Atlantean days, it went on for at least thousands of years, and there's no, I think the historian, I haven't got as far as determining the exact period compared to where we are, but I believe it's probably around like 11,000 years or at least more than 10,000 years ago that they existed. Some say that it's a lot longer than that. They mainly consume vegetables, and they talked about the mystics at the time, they did not eat because only the most advanced did this. Like, so most people ate, but the mystics didn't eat. And remember, I guess a few weeks ago, we talked about me going through this dry fasting of not eating, and some monks in the Himalayas or different mountains in India that does this is kind of like, again, it's no conflict. It's saying the same thing. Like the mystics didn't need to eat. They just fed off the energy of this planet and through the lights as well. And the Atlantean, one thing that from what I've shared before, that again, this channeling kind of matches this, is they work on telepathic, they work on a hive mind. So they didn't need phones to communicate. They didn't even need government as a result, or government as we know it, how this decision needs to be made. It's like, imagine that we got a hive mind. Imagine we work as a bee colony or ant colony. We just telepathically, hey, what should we do with this? And telepathically come to ingredients, and that's it. They were also quite advanced in the consciousness. So they use the telepathic power to build the structures, to move the stone. And similar to how the law of one described, like we think that like a lot of the modern day thinking is that they somehow roll the big blocks in Egypt, like using the logs of wood to roll the big blocks of rocks and somehow pull it up using a pulley to pull it up. Like even in modern days, the technology we're looking at is not an easy feat. The rock's a big piece of rock and they're extremely heavy, and the mathematical precision on how it's built in relation to the stars and everything else is just not possible. It's just so precise, every single piece of the stone. But during the Dolores work that talks about the Atlantis, they go into a bit more detail. Their pyramid, which we don't see anymore, is the same as how the Egyptian pyramid and the one in Peru is being built, because it's the same people that eventually migrated to Egypt and Peru when Atlantis was, before the whole destruction happened. So some people left by boat to those cities, and they took the same teaching and the same skill set to build those places. And those stones are actually partially is made of crystals, and they're malleable. So they can use the telepathic power to mold the stone. So yeah, that's how the stones, you can basically morph it in the shape that you want using your mind. And to transport the stone, they could actually use magic carpets, kind of like Aladdin. But yeah, they actually use magic carpet to transport stuff. Entertainment, they have similar like drama, play, music and stuff. But if there's a show on that's a bit further from where you are, you just use the telepathic power to tune into it. So you don't even need TV like to watch it. They use a lot of crystals to focus the energy. They did have aircraft and different spaceship as well, and they mainly using crystal and solar panel to power it. And the solar panel they use is not as gigantic in size as ours. To power the same equivalent solar panel size, they can use it to generate a lot more power. And for crystals, they've also got different crystal for different purposes, some for healing, and different crystal will heal different things. So in modern days, when people could call certain people do crystal healing, they do use the different crystals, so that kind of makes sense. Nice lights, they have crystal that actually store light, so you can put it inside the house and emanate light. And I think the Bible talks about like Jesus having like those type of crystals in his home somewhere within the Bible. So what really got me aroused in my thinking is when they talks about that these advanced being of the Atlantean, that obviously they have telepathic power, they have these advanced technologies, and they have this just really strong psychic power that they know how to heal. Like you can use your psychic power to heal yourself. You can tell yourself like what is wrong with my body, if you get cold or whatever thing, like what is going on inside, and communicate it and heal it accordingly. But then what they started doing is that they started tampering with different species, and they started mixing the human structure with other animals. And so they have the equivalent of a centaur, like mixing a human with a horse. They have the mermaid. They have the human head on a goat's feet. And by the way, when a person that's under hypnosis like was sharing this information, they didn't call it centaur, they didn't call it like a mermaid. They say, oh, somehow they're changing the animal's form into a human head. And they had horse legs. That's how it was describing it. And it talks about when they're altering the molecular structure of the animals are actually in pain when they go through this process. And what I'm about to share is going to be like slightly more disturbing as well. They started doing all this, and we created these centaurs and mermaids or whatever, and let's just use these as servants. So, because apparently they have of a lower intelligence. And so they just basically use them to do the farming, the mermaids to catch the fish, the centaur would do the cooking as well, the food preparation. And some of them actually treated them quite nice as pets, and as we would do as pets or servants. But one of the scenes that they describe is they have all these half human, half animal in an arena, like kind of like the gladiator arena, and they just put them in to fight each other, more than 100 of them. And the person that was describing, like going through the hypnosis, like, oh man, this is so sick. Like, why are they doing this? It's so sad, like, especially for a species so advanced that you think that they would look at life differently. The way that he described it is like, I guess they look at these beings is of a lower class, is of a lower intelligence. And it hit home. It's almost like if we put two ants together to try and fight, or two grasshoppers to fight, or two chickens to fight. In many cultures, or in certain pockets of certain regions of this world, is quite acceptable. There's nothing wrong. Imagine two kids like innocently like putting two ants to fight. We don't think there's anything wrong with it. In fact, we find it even interesting. But knowing that when they're seeing is one of us is quite sickening. And it talks about that these Atlanteans, just to testing out, they would also capture some of the people that buy into the advanced technology, advanced thinking, like they're more indigenous people, and eat them up alive to see what it is like. Because when you have all this power, and this is like my understanding or my interpretation is not reflective of everyone at Atlantis that were doing it, but certain tribes, certain group were definitely into this, that they started experimenting with different things. What could we do with our power? And I guess like the person under hypnotic was saying, the attitude that they came off when they're putting this half human, half animal into the arena, they have this arrogant feeling about it, like we are superior. They do not respect the lower life form. They feel cold-hearted. And what the main message I got from this is that when Dolores was drawing parallels to what is going on right now, because Atlantis was becoming quite advanced. Eventually, what brought on to the destruction partially is these acts of manipulation of the animal. By the way, eventually the higher powers stopped that from happening. You could no longer manipulate the molecular structure of the animals and the humans to do this half being. And it also makes sense when you got the indigenous or the ancient cultures depicting on the wall from different regions of the world of these centaurs, of these mermaids, or even people having in the dreams. It must have come from somewhere. Even like in Chinese culture, they got the long dragon, but where would that come from? Why is it so consistent? Even the unicorn, I haven't learned where the unicorn came from, but because so many people have the same dream, so when they talk about this Atlantean stage, that's where it came from. And since then, it's never happened on Earth. It kind of makes sense that, oh, wow, it did happen once upon a time. One of the things that the high power decided to stop it because of the mixing of the hybrid between human and animals. Basically, our whole purpose on this planet is to advance evolution, is to learn what it's like and continue to evolve.